All right, guys, welcome back. I know I promised you, some shooting projectiles and like some action in this lesson, but I forgot we have some things we have to take care of first. And one of those things is we can build a tower on top of a tower on top of a tower, and we don't want to be able to do that. We want one tower per build site, right? And then the second thing we want to do is right now, when you click on a tower, you actually don't know if you have a tower until you click again. So we're going to, when you click, we're going to have the tower follow the cursor and then get placed where you place it. It'll look really cool. It'll be worth it. I know we're not shooting things yet, but those are a couple things we should fix. And then, this bug where we can just keep building towers. Like, that's just not good. All right, so let's take care of those bugs, and then we will shoot projectiles in the next lesson. All right, well, at least prepare to shoot projectiles in the next lesson. So why don't we go ahead? We just need our game or our tower manager still. And let's see, the only thing we need to do is, this is pretty cool, okay? Let's see, I'm just thinking out loud here. Thinking the best way to do this. Our build tiles have a collider on them. Let's just make sure. Let's verify that. So our prefabs, they're not prefabs. So our build tower, they do have a collider. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to reference that collider. And why I want to reference the collider is I want to rename the collider when we build a tower to it, okay? So a really quick way to, do this is simply just rename our collider tag when it's built, right? So hit actually references the object that the tower is being placed on. So if we do hit collider.tag, and let's just name this tag build site full. All right, and close it. And I don't want to do two equal signs. We are setting it, and I should spell build right. So B-U-I-L-D. All right, build site full. So now we're only allowing a tower to be built on a collider tag with the collider tag build site, not build site full. Okay, so if we save this and run it, it should fix our problem. So let's place a tower. Build site full, not defined. Well, silly us, we need to make a tag called build site full. So I'm sorry, you guys didn't probably see what I just did. All right, click on any game object, and we're up in the inspector. Build site, just hit add tag and it'll go into the tag layers. Let's get out of the run mode, otherwise it won't save our changes. So when we're back in our tags, hit the plus arrow, and we need to do build site full camel casing. Okay, now let's go ahead and run it, and it should work now. So let's build a tower. All right, sweet. Let's try to build a tower over it. It's not doing it, but we can build a tower there. All right, cool. So that's one bug taken care of, right? All right, sweet. Let's move on. Now we want to, when we click on a tower, we want it to follow our mouse and drag around. And it's a lot easier than you think it is, actually. There are a few things that we need to reference on our tower, though. So go to the tower manager. Oh, what did I do? I didn't click on anything. Go to the tower manager script. All right, and at the top, we need to make a private variable of type sprite renderer, and it'll pull up, and that is the sprite renderer. So that is what is actually setting the image to our game object, our tower game object. Okay, And we're just going to call this sprite renderer with a lowercase s. Okay. So this is now a variable that can be a sprite renderer. Okay. But now we need to actually look for this component. So in the start method, call your sprite renderer variable, set it equal to now get component. All right. And if you do a less than and greater than sign, and inside of these, we want to look for sprite renderer. Sprite renderer. Okay. So this is grabbing an instance of a sprite renderer. It's getting, not grabbing an instance. It's looking for a component. I believe if we click on this, we can read about it. Nope, I did that wrong. This isn't Swift. Okay, so what this get component will do is it will actually grab the reference of the sprite renderer to the script that it's in. So it's going to look for sprite renderer in Tower Manager. And now that I just said that, I realized we didn't add a sprite renderer to our Tower Manager. So we should do that right now. So if we click on Tower Manager, add component, and if we just type sprite renderer, and that's that. All we need to do is leave it blank. We'll be setting the sprite in the code, okay? So save it, and let's go back to our variable. Okay, so what this does now is it will grab, whatever script is attached to sprite renderer, okay? All right, and now what we need to do is, let's see, when we click on a button, we need to have a sprite attached to our mouse. Okay, easy enough. And we also need that sprite to follow the mouse, right? And then when we click, we need it to remove from the mouse. So let's think about a few things here. All right, so when we click, we want our sprite renderer to become enabled. All right, and okay, so we need three methods, right? We need something to tell the sprite to follow the mouse. We need something to enable the sprite, the drag sprite, so it knows that so we need something to enable the sprite renderer so we see the sprite, and we also have to set the sprite to the sprite renderer. And then we also need to disable that sprite renderer when we place the tower, otherwise it'll keep following the mouse, right? All right, so let's think about this. In the update, inside of the mouse click, let's see here, because this is where we're clicking. Yeah, so we're clicking to select the tower here, right? So we need to see if, all right, yeah. So if sprite renderer, okay, that's our variable, is enabled, then we need to call a method like, I don't know, we need to tell it to follow our mouse, right? So let's follow mouse, and we'll make a method for this right now. All right, so underneath select tower, go ahead and make some space, do public void follow mouse. All right. And now in follow mouse, this is really easy. It's really easy to make things follow the mouse. Just do transform dot position. All right, so basically whatever sprite is attached to the sprite renderer, that's what we're controlling. That's so we are just, it's like this dot transform. We're just, there's only one sprite renderer on the Tower Manager object, if that makes sense. So transform position is we're talking about that sprite, and all we want it to do is find the camera. This is kind of like above here when we use the camera to find the world point. So camera dot main dot screen to world point again. All right. And now we want the input, and we need the mouse position. And this is all built-in functionality inside of Unity. All right, so that's all we need. That's all we need to happen right there. All right. So when we click, you know, whatever sprite is on the screen is following the mouse. All right. Now we need to have a function to turn the sprite renderer on and off and set a sprite to it. Okay. So let's do a public void, and we'll call this enable drag sprite. All right. And we need to pass a sprite in, and we'll just call it a sprite for the variable. All right. And when we enable it, that means we need to call our sprite renderer variable or object sprite renderer dot enable equals true. And we need our sprite renderer sprite. So we need to set the sprite to the sprite we just passed in. So to sprite. Okay. And now we need to just do the exact opposite for disable. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. And obviously we don't have to pass anything in on a disable. So that isn't there. And let's change enable to disable. So disable drag sprite. And let's see. We need to set this to false. And we don't need to set the sprite. So let's go ahead and just delete this line for now. All right, now I think we need to go up to our button. And when we click it, when we click the button, where's our button? We need to just call enable our drag sprite, right? So enable drag sprite and pass in the sprite associated with the tower button. So tower button pressed dot. Okay, 1 second. We need to add a sprite to our buttons. So save this here, leave that error. It's fine. We'll fix it in a second. We don't have access to anything. So let's click on our button. So in the hierarchy, canvas, open tower, and then night button. Let's see here. We need to add to our script. So once you click on that, you can just click on the tower button script. And we need to make a drag sprite. So let's make a private variable. We'll make it a serialized field. Private. And this is type sprite. And this will be our drag sprite. So this is the sprite being used that will follow the mouse around, right? And then we need to make a getter. I'm just going to copy and paste this getter and rename everything. And this is a sprite, capital S. And this is going to be drag sprite with a capital D. It has to be different than our private variable, remember. And then return the drag sprite with a lowercase d, so we're actually returning the private variable. All right. We're almost there, guys. So save that, and then we can go back to our tower manager and access our drag sprite now, our capital D drag. Okay. So now we pass in a drag sprite, and that's that. So now all we have to do is actually go to our buttons. Okay, so now that we created that serialized field under our buttons, we're going to have our drag sprite show up right here. So we need to drag our tower sprite. So go into sprites in your assets folder and go down to tower. And then for our night, we need our night post front. Drag that into there. And of course, it's not going to let me. Let's try it one more time. There it goes. I don't know why it doesn't let you sometimes. So we're dragging our sprites from our sprite folder. So now click on the castle button and drag the castle tower front into our sprite. And then go to the rock button and do the tower, archer tower front to that one. I know it's a little confusing with the different names, but we'll survive. Oh, and let's go ahead and just hit apply on all these. So go back through and hit apply on the top right in the inspector, and that'll just keep our prefabs up to date. All right, I think we're ready to test this. So let's just go through what we did again. In our tower manager, when our mouse is clicked, we are, if our sprite renderer is enabled, we're following our mouse. And our sprite renderer gets enabled in the select tower button. So when the button is pushed, it enables, it calls the enable drag sprite. So we enable it here. And then, when we place the tower, we need to call disable drag sprite. So once that position is there, let's go ahead and call disable drag sprite. Okay, and now I think we're ready. Let's go ahead and run this. All right, so click. Oh, and it's not working. What do you guys think is happening? I think it is working. I just think it's behind everything. So we have to fix the sorting layer of our sprite. Okay, we care about, so come to the tower manager, and where our sprite renderer is, it's in sorting layer default. We want it with items, and we also want it to drag over everything. So let's make this a 5. I think our other towers are also a 5. So maybe make this a 6 so it drags over our existing towers as well. So that what I did was come into our main camera in the hierarchy, click on tower manager, and then where our sprite renderer is, that's where we're actually setting the sprite. We're changing the sorting layer to items. And then we're creating the order in that layer. It's a 6, so it's above towers. And let's run this again. And now click on our sprite, and it's still not working. All right, so what could it be? Let's pull up our code here. All right, I think we have a logic problem here. I think, so basically if the sprite renderer is enabled, if we're not clicking, it's not finding it, so I don't want it in here. My bad. All right, so we don't care if the mouse is clicking whether our sprite renderer is enabled, so put it outside of that if statement. All right, save it. And then one thing I did on when I was looking for a bug, add a sorting layer. Say add sorting layers, so click on tower manager and then go to sorting layer. In the sprite renderer, hit add sorting layer and add one called units, because we want to make sure everything that we're adding right now is above everything else. That wasn't the problem. I just decided I think that's a good idea. And then we can make this like order in layer 5 just to make sure it's always on top. Let's go ahead and run this and try it again. And it's still not working. All right. All right, so since all of our layers are right, I just think that the transform position is getting screwed up. So I think it's actually still placing our object behind everything. So there's one more line of code that we could put in the follow mouse. Let's just go ahead and set our transform position to a new vector 2. And we're just calling the same position from the mouse position and setting position.x, and then do the same thing, transform.position.y. And this will kind of reset. It'll make sure everything's on the top of the page. And let's just go ahead and save it and try it again. I have had this bug before, and oh, look at that. We got a dragger. All right, cool. Let me just make it full screen so we can all see it. So click, and now we have a tower following our mouse. Pretty cool. All right, so now that we have that, I guess what we could do is start preparing for our projectiles, so we can import our assets for our projectiles now. And why don't we do that? Let's just, I don't remember if we did any. No, so let's make a new folder. And so go into assets, in your sprites, right click and create new folder. And let's call this one projectiles. All right, now let's go to our assets folder that you guys downloaded with this project. Go into sprites. And let's see here. We have a folder called projectiles, and pretty cool. We have our arrow, and we have our fireball and rock. And I know we've already imported the arrow, but for right now, let's just go ahead and highlight all three of these and drag them into our projectiles. And then up here on this arrow, go ahead and delete that. And let's go into our projectile folder. All right, cool. Let's make sure everything's the right size. Let's create. Let's just drag one onto here. Okay, so that's gigantic. Let's make it smaller. Probably like 1,000 pixels. Apply. That looks good. All right. So let's go ahead and drag our fireball out here now. And we're going to want this one smaller too. So let's try 800. I want this a little bigger than the rock. That's too small. 600. Let's try 500. That's probably too big. Let's go back to 600. That's probably good. Yeah, that's good. And now let's throw our arrow out here. And our arrow is gigantic also. So select the arrow in your sprites assets, and let's make that one 600 as well. All right, maybe 800. That looks really hard to see. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let's try 1,000. I just want to see what it looks like. Oh wait, that's going the wrong way. Let's try 600. That's probably a little better. I think our rock should be smaller still. 1,100. Let's go with 1,200 and call it a day. All right, so we have our projectiles. So now what we need to do is, so just dragging them out here created game objects for them, okay? Let's go ahead and lowercase rock. I don't want it uppercased, and also lowercase fireball. And now in our prefabs folder, let's right click it and hit create new folder and call this one projectiles. All right, and now let's drag the three of these into our, of course I forget that you can never drag them all at once. So drag one at a time into the projectiles prefab folder, and they turn blue when you get them there. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and delete these now. Off the hierarchy, not the prefabs. Now the prefabs are ready for us to grab. And there's one more thing, just to think ahead. We want the, go ahead and click on the sprite. I will do that again. I did that kind of quick. Go down into sprites, projectiles, click on your arrow and hit sprite editor. See this blue circle in the middle of our screen? That's the pivot point, and we're shooting these things. So I'm going to make our pivot point on the arrow, the, let's see, the right side. And there it is on the tip now. And I think that's perfect. So go ahead and click apply at the top and then close this. And we're going to do that on the fireball also. So click on the fireball, sprite editor, And this one, let's do custom. So click on the pivot, go down to custom, and we want it 0.5 on the Y, but we want it close to the front, but not quite the front, to make it just look a little cooler. So I think 0.85 will be good. And so when we shoot these things, go ahead and hit apply. They're gonna basically want to connect that pivot point to the target. And I mean, we could put it on the very tip. I guess it wouldn't matter. But I just wanted to show you can also customize the pivot point. And we just want it towards the front because that pivot point is actually going to be what is trying to hit the target when we aim the projectile at it, so it flies towards them. Otherwise, you'd just like have an arrow, you know, like a sideways stick hitting people instead of the tip of the arrow actually hitting the enemy. So, all right, now that those are set up, I think actually we're not going to end the video yet. Let's go into our prefabs in our projectiles. Click on the arrow and let's add a component. Let's add a, close this out if you have anything searching. Go to Physics 2D and go to Box Collider. And let's go ahead and drag this prefab back onto the screen. All right, so see this box collider? It's huge. It's surrounding the whole arrow. I think the length is good, but let's go ahead and make it skinnier. And this box collider, we want it to trigger only, right? That way, if we don't have trigger set, it would like hit an enemy and either move the enemy or it would bounce off the enemy. Trigger just means it'll go through and let us know it goes through. And when it hits that trigger, we can actually destroy the game object. All right, so let's just make this size a little smaller. So we want the size of this box probably like 0.45. And the box got a little smaller. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. I'll zoom in. Let's actually make it smaller. Let's go to 0.3, 0.02, 0.01. Let's do 0.01. I think that's good. So that is that green rectangle. If that hits the enemy, it'll be considered an arrow hitting it. So let's go ahead and hit apply since we're working on one that's not a prefab. And now we can delete this from the hierarchy. That's fine. And let's drag Fireball out. And add component, Physics 2D. And for this one, let's do a circle collider. And this collider is gigantic, as you can see. So let's go ahead and make this radius smaller, probably even smaller than that, a little bigger. All right, 0.15. And then we need to move this offset to 0. We need to go a little negative, so negative 0.01. No, more than that, 0.56. All right, that I would say is good. So this whole front is going, if this hits the, let's make it bigger. 0.2, no, 0.18. 0.17. Okay, radius is going to be 0.17, and now we'll slide this back. And look at that, we got a perfect circle pretty much around the fireball. So go ahead and hit apply. And we can delete this one, that collider. Oh, wait a second. I forgot to select is trigger. So go ahead and go into your prefabs and go into your fireball and just select is trigger and we're good. And now for the rock, let's drag the rock out. The only reason I'm dragging him on the scene is so we can see the collider size. And go ahead and do Physics 2D. And let's do a round collider for this one as well. And let's make this one 0.1, that's too small. 0.15, that's too big. 0.12. Okay, 0.12 looks good, and the offset can be 0, 0. That's looking good. And then don't forget to check is triggered. And then also apply this so it hits the prefab. And then we can delete it off the hierarchy, and all of our projectiles are set up, and they're ready for the enemy, right? So let's make sure. Yeah, we have box gliders on our enemies already. So let's call this a video, and next time we'll start working on the code that will actually shoot the projectile from the tower. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.